Story 1. I was recently in this situation. I invested the money in an index fund, which has gained about 20% in less than a year. Story 2. Sit on it for a couple of weeks and see what a dumpster fire the fifth becomes. Story 3. Same thing we do every weekend. Pinky. Try to take over the world. Story 4. If I had $100,000 in cash right now, speaking as a 23-year-old, I would invest my maximum contribution, $7,000, into my Roth individual retirement account right away. B. Put a percentage of the money into a high-yield savings account for emergencies. C. Pay off any loans or debts I have, such as credit cards, car loans, and other bills. D. Use the remainder as a down payment to buy my first home for my family and me, assuming I would have about $50,000 to $60,000 left after paying off debts. After that, I would work freely and be debt-free, with only a mortgage and monthly bills. Story 5. If I had $100,000 in cash right now, I would split it 3 ways. A safety net, smart investments, and a life fund. I would set aside $30,000 for emergencies, invest $50,000 in stocks and index funds to let it grow, and keep $20,000 to travel, learn new skills, or start a side hustle. This way, I am taking care of my future while also making sure I enjoy the present. Story 6. I received a settlement. I paid off all my debts in my car, bought my stepchild her first car, went on a vacation, bought new clothes, replaced my old dumpster furniture, and my partner and I took a few months off work and were able to be picky about jobs when we returned. The first thing I did was cry. After leaving the bank and realizing it was real, seeing that number in my bank account made me dizzy. Story 7. Make it non-liquid. I already have my life set for the next 6 months, so I will put it in a money market for now. Story 8. Treat myself to a nice dinner for $100. Then begin the real estate hunt with my newly found $99,900 as a down payment. Story 9. Put the money in a mutual fund until I decide how to invest it. Story 10. $100,000 in liquid assets isn't that much these days. If I won an extra $100,000, I'd probably quit my job and go full-time on my hobbies to turn them into a business. Story 11. Pay off my boyfriend's and my brother's debts. Save the rest. Story 12. I have $100,000 in cash. It was supposed to be a down payment on a house, but now it is just sitting in a high-yield savings account. Story 13. I'd probably just deposit it into my investment savings account. We're already in the early stages of looking for a house, so that would help. Story 14. $1,000 to clear out credit cards. $24,000 into a Section 529 college savings plan for my child. $10,000 into a checking account to boost the emergency fund. $10,000 to convert the master bathroom from a shower-only layout to a bathtub. $15,000 for a vacation where we do not pinch pennies. $40,000 into a broad index fund. I would not contribute a dime to my mortgage at 2.9% or my car loan at 2.9%. Story 15. 1. Pay off all my debt. 2. Save 6 months' worth of living expenses in an emergency fund. 3. Maximize contributions to my Roth individual retirement account for the year. 4. Invest any remaining funds in the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. 5. Treat myself to a special Chinese meal. 6. Masturbate. Story 16. I have $335,000 of liquid cash and intend to keep it in a Morgan Stanley high-yield savings account earning approximately $1,250 per month in interest. Story 17. Sweep it under the rug, like I do with everything I do not know how to handle. Story 18. I would pay off medical bills, student loans, and credit cards. I would put the rest in the bank to cover monthly utility bills. I would then be debt-free except for the house payment. It is amazing how $100,000 could be life-changing. Story 19. Pay off debts and use the remainder to buy a small house or apartment. I would spend $5,000 on motorcycles for my girlfriend and me, though. Story 20. Pay off my immediate debts so my account is in the black, then invest the rest. Story 21. My dad has been saving to go back to school to study electrical engineering because he did not have the chance when I was born. He has done so much for me, and I just want to see him achieve that goal. Story 22. Paying off my vehicle loans and my only credit card would free up a lot to put into a savings account. Story 23. I would put it in a certificate of deposit earning around 5% interest. Once it matures, I would reinvest the funds. Story 24. Pay off my debts and then be able to start my business. It's as simple as that. Story 25. I would pay off all of my parents' debt, give them the remaining money, and keep only $5,000 for myself. Story 26. Pay off my credit cards and my girlfriend's, and give money to my parents. Story 27. A house down payment. I could get a bigger return on an individual investment, but turning rent, my biggest expense, into an investment would improve my financial flexibility. Story 28. Pay off any loans with an annual percentage rate above 10%. Then invest the rest in the Vanguard Standard and Poor's 500 exchange-traded fund and forget about it. I will be able to give myself a good head start on retirement or maybe buy a house in a few years. Story 29. Student loans and the dentist were my biggest stress inducers. I celebrated their end with copious amounts of mind-altering substances. Story 30. Pay off all my debt, then put the rest in a high-interest savings account, along with 90% of my current monthly payments. Maintain my current lifestyle for a few years, then buy a house with cash. Story 31. Clearing as much of my debt as possible after placing $15,000 in savings. Story 32. Put it under the bed. I don't know anything about investing. I have been living off it for a long time. Story 33. I make enough to get by, but not quite enough to get ahead yet, so I need $50,000 in savings and $50,000 for a down payment on a house. Story 34. Half the stocks and the rest for a trip to Japan, maybe to cheer me up. Story 35. I already have it in a money market account at 2.75%. Story 36. Immediately put it in a high-yield savings account or a low-risk investment and let it ride. Story 37. 1. Pay off all debt. 2. College fund for my children. 3. Rebuild the emergency fund I had to use. 4. Invest any remaining funds. Story 38. Pay for the wedding with 1/3 of the funds and use the rest to pay down the mortgage. Story 39. I need a down payment on a house that is much more accessible than the tiny place I am in now. It is very hard for my wife to get around right now. I would do anything to make it easier for her. Story 40. Oh my fucking God. I have so much less stress. I'd get dental work to fix my broken tooth. I'd give money to my family members so they can get medical care too. I'd plan my first adult vacation, pay off all my debt, and have plenty left over to start my first savings account. Story 41. It will probably be placed directly into the special needs trust for my children. Story 42. My answer is boring. I would put most of it toward my mortgage and save and invest the rest. Story 43. $10,000 to creditors, $20,000 for my house, and then all the guitars I want. Story 44. Buy a Fabergé egg, put it on a golf tee in the back garden, and yeet it through my next-door neighbor's glasshouse. Story 45. Pay off my debts. Buy my wife a more reliable car. Then start rebuilding my credit. Story 46. 100,000 is basically nothing. I would invest it in index funds over time. Story 47. Figure out how to turn it back into a solid so I can spend it. Story 48. Find a way to get it into solid form instead of a fluid state. Story 49. Make it less liquid as soon as possible. I do not have any debts, so I would invest it in my currently well-performing assets. Story 50. I do not think the Walmart cashier would be very happy if I tried to pay with a bottle of bills. Story 51. Shower everyone with cash. Share the wealth. Story 52. My first move is to go to the convenience store across the street and buy those small boxed wines. I will order cannabis next. I cannot make big plans like having $100,000 sober. That would be stupid. Story 53. Down payment for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom bungalow. Make 1 bedroom my writing office. Story 54. Pay off my house. Put the rest into the Standard & Poor's 500 index and let it sit until retirement. Story 55. I would buy a recreational vehicle and travel the world. I do not know how much longer my illness will allow me to move around easily. Story 56. I built a 3-car garage that should be finished this month. Now we are redoing our bathrooms. Story 57. 10% for buying gold. 30% for an emergency fund. 30% for a bank deposit to generate 5.5% per year. 10% for paying my debt or credit card. 10% for any investment that could appear. 10% for any unplanned ideas such as buying things or travel. Story 58. I have very little debt, so I would pay off my mom's mortgage, which is almost paid off. Story 59. I am redoing my backyard. With the remaining $50,000, I will pay off my wife's student loans. Story 60. Pay off debts. Allocate 25% to an emergency fund if I do not have one. Put half of the remaining amount into affordable real estate and the other half into exchange-traded funds. Story 61. Pay off my credit cards, about $4,000. Max out my individual retirement account contributions for the remainder of 2024 and for 2025. Pay off my car. Fully fund an emergency fund with 6 to 9 months of expenses for emergencies. Possibly buy myself something nice, such as a new desktop computer with top specifications. Invest any remaining funds in my brokerage account in exchange-traded funds that track the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations 100 Index and the Standard & Poor's 500 Index. Story 62. Put a down payment on 5 acres in the country with the potential for multigenerational living. Story 63. Throwing it into the freezer will make it solid again. I do not think cash is usable in a liquid state. Story 64. Give some away, spend a couple of $1,000s on new wardrobe staples, and invest the rest. Story 65. Put it in a giant pit and swim in it like Scrooge McDuck. Story 66. I would invest it. The Standard & Poor's 500 index averages 8 to 10% returns and would grow well until my retirement. Story 67. $10,000 for a vacation with my wife. $90,000 for investments. Story 68. Open a McDonald's. They never sit idle, so I can imagine the revenue. Story 69. Use $75,000 to pay off the mortgage, then deposit the remaining $25,000 into a high-yield savings account for emergencies. Story 70. Pay off my debts and put the rest in savings in case the cancer treatment lasts longer than I expect. Story 71. Serious, coherent handling of glorious existence allows the public to recognize a vast life. Story 72. Get me out of my difficult situation and try to help my friends and family. I know it's only 100,000, but that could help a lot of people I know. Story 73. I'd probably invest a chunk of it and use the rest for some memorable experiences, balancing smart choices with living a little. Story 74. Buying a lot of land and opening an animal sanctuary is easy. Story 75. Pay off my bills. Allocate $10,000 for repairs to my house. Donate $10,000 to various animal rescues. Place the remaining $50,000 in a 5-year interest-bearing certificate of deposit and roll it over as many times as I want. Story 76. I explored a few options to see if I could arrange things so I would not have to work and could figure out what I would like to do with my life. Story 77. $80,000 to $90,000 in the Standard & Poor's 500 index. Use the rest to eat whatever the fuck I want. Story 78. Pay off my mortgage. It would allow our family to help so many more people. Story 79. Clear the bills, pay off the car, buy groceries, then pay the rent in advance. Story 80. Invest a little, enjoy some, and save most so I can live comfortably for at least a decade. Meanwhile, continue paying off my house with my income. Story 81. I'm fortunate enough not to have any debt, so I just invest it all. Story 82. Put 15% into investments. Pay off my largest debts immediately and direct half of the monthly amount I was paying toward those debts into savings. Keep this up until I retire. Story 83. Put it into short-term savings and buy a house next July or August. Story 84. Get everything into the container before it slips through my fingers. Story 85. Pay off debts, invest $50,000, and use the rest as a down payment on a house. Story 86. The practical answer is to invest it for retirement, as I am middle-aged and debt-free. The fun answer is a lot of travel, both with the kids and without. A month in Hawaii with the kids. Then a private nude beach trip for just my wife and me. Story 87. I threw it all at my debt and still have about 80,000 left. America is fun. Story 88. Dry it off. Maybe take a sip and see what it tastes like. Story 89. Sell put options with a 30 to 35 delta on NVIDIA Corporation or the Invesco QQQ Trust. Then sell call options to maintain the position. Use lower deltas in the 20 to 25 range. Reinvest the income into the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. Story 90. Pay off my wife's car. Put the rest in a high-yield savings account so I can stop worrying about the unknown. Story 91. Buy some toilet paper in preparation for the United States election. Story 92. I'd love to have another child. $100,000 would help with some of what we need to sort out to make that possible. Story 93. I'd run it through a strainer to get me some solid cash. Oh, look at that, $1.57. Just my luck. Story 94. I would put $25,000 into the Section 529 college savings plans for each of my 2 children and invest the remainder in an individual retirement account. Story 95. Pay off medical and student loan debt, pay down our mortgage, add to our emergency savings, and probably use the rest to take my family on a Disney World vacation. We're fortunate not to have much debt anymore. We've been chipping away at it for over a decade. Story 96. I would spend a few $1,000s on repairs for an extra car sitting unused and invest the rest. If the money came to me magically, I would still pay for the repairs, give some to a couple of people I know, and invest the remainder. Story 97. I've always been great with money, so I took 7 friends out for pizza in Salerno, obviously. Story 98. Buy a low-cost exchange-traded fund with half of the money. Put the other half into a high-yield savings account. Story 99. Withdraw it from the bank and leave the country. It has to be a mistake, and I need to escape and start over somewhere before they realize it. Laughing out loud. Story 100. Pay off debt and buy certificates of deposit. The economy tends to get weird after elections. Story 101. Buy new beds for my mom and me. Pay off debt. Do some repairs and upgrades around the house. Story 102. Pay off my car, buy my brother a car, and find a reasonably modest place to live. Story 103. Pay off high-interest debts, set aside money for the kids' college, fix up and sell the house, then use the equity as a down payment on a place with no neighbors. Story 104. Interest on debt is crippling, so we use all of it to pay down credit card debt, student loans, car loans, and the mortgage. Story 105. Freeze it and hope I can spend it somewhere fast before it melts again. Story 106. Paying off my car, student loans, and credit card. Buying a new MacBook. Booking a week-long stay at an all-inclusive resort, and putting the remaining approximately $20,000 into a high-yield savings account. Story 107. I would pay off my credit card and car payment, under $6,000 total. Then once a week, I would withdraw a couple of $1,000s from the bank and keep it in my safe. Half would go toward my Roth individual retirement account. Story 108. Well, I am sitting with my dad in the emergency room right now, so I would imagine that the money would be immediately spoken for. Story 109. Pay off student debt. Second move, travel until the money is gone. Story 110. Quit my job, pay my bills for 3 years, and try to go to school full-time. Story 111. Pay off loans. Split the remaining balance by investing half of it and use the other half as a down payment on a house. Story 112. Allocate half for a down payment on a house. Keep $25,000 liquid for emergencies and day-to-day expenses. Allocate $25,000 for investment. Story 113. Pay off debt. Invest some of the remainder, but not all, into a low-cost total market index fund. Be cautious. Goldman Sachs recently published an analysis suggesting the 10-year stock market return is unlikely to exceed inflation. Story 114. Probably pay $50,000 off my mortgage, use a large portion of that to pay off the student loans for my wife and me, and go on a holiday. It would not totally change my life overnight. I could not retire, but it would make a big difference. Story 115. Pay off student loan. Pay off parents' mortgage. Save a deposit for a house. Pay off the remaining balance on the car. Keep $10,000 as a reserve, investment, and emergency fund. Story 116. Pay off debts, including the car loan. Allocate some money to investments and some for leisure. Story 117. Pay off my current debt, which is about $50,000. I will invest the other $50,000 in Vanguard exchange-traded funds. Then I will continue to cry every Monday morning as I face another work week. Story 118. I will pay off a minivan for approximately $25,000 and a credit card balance of approximately $3,000. Then I will take my wife and children back home to Indiana from Florida. We cannot always go when we want because I am in the military. I will save the remainder for an emergency fund and a down payment on a house when I leave the service. Story 119. Post on Reddit and watch people discuss liquidity. Story 120. Since I do not have any debts, I will save and invest for the long term. If you have debts, pay them first. Story 121. Pay off the vehicle. Then split the remainder evenly between the mortgage principal and home improvements. Story 122. I would probably deposit most of it in a certificate of deposit account for a guaranteed return while rates are still high. After that, I can allocate it among various investments. Story 123. Put some of it toward a car that I am buying soon. Invest the rest. Story 124. Some funds will go to necessary house renovations. The rest will go into savings. Story 125. The stock market has been doing well over the past few years, and I do not think a recession is on the horizon. I would invest in a total market mutual fund and let it grow. Story 126. Repair our house that flooded so we have a home to return to. Use the remaining funds to replace items in our home, such as my children's beds, and restore some normalcy for them. Story 127. Pay off debt. Replace the car. Invest the remaining funds in an asset that yields a return and use them to buy a house when either interest rates or home prices improve sufficiently. Story 128. I would buy 100,000 lottery tickets. With odds like that, I am bound to be a rich man. Story 129. But so many items are still worth money that the United States government cannot tax. Story 130. Paying off as much debt as possible to put my husband's mind at ease. Story 131. I will pay off the car my wife and I own, settle the credit card debt I racked up while I was between jobs, and then save the rest. Story 132. I try my hardest to make it non-liquid so I can actually spend it. Who wants to keep liquid in their wallet? Story 133. Apply it to my mortgage balance at renewal, which is imminent, as it would free up substantial monthly cash flow and allow me to pay off the house much sooner. Story 134. Put the money in an index fund and forget it until I retire. I have no debt except my mortgage, but my retirement savings could always use more. Story 135. I want a home for my children. I am tired of living under someone else's roof and having 2 of my 3 children in a different state with their father. I am a good mother. The economy has taken a huge toll. Story 136. I already have enough liquid cash in the portfolio. I would invest it in a basket of blue-chip, high-yield stocks such as Altria Group and Verizon Communications. This would generate $7,000 per year in qualified dividend income. Story 137. Buying a Starbucks iced coffee with all the extras, then paying off my car. Story 138. Start a business to earn more money than I currently have. Story 139. 1. Pay off my only debt. My car, $13,000. 2. Buy a Mazda Miata for $12,000. 3. Invest in index funds. Story 140. Cut everyone off and start a new life in Japan. Story 141. I would buy a more reliable car, such as a Toyota Prius. I would get new cochlear implant batteries, pay off my credit card, hire a cleaner for my apartment, replace my furniture, buy new clothes, and put some money into savings. Story 142. Pay off a little debt and take a trip to Greece or Japan. Story 143. I would pay off most of our debt, keep the mortgage, and use what is left to take my husband on his bucket list trip. Story 144. Put the majority of it into a high-interest savings account or an individual savings account and pay off recurring monthly bills. The very first thing is to book flights and a hotel so I can spend time with my partner, since I have not seen him in person since January 2020. Story 145. Pay my minimal debt. Buy a pre-owned car in good condition. Buy my parents a pre-owned car in good condition. Repay my father $6,000 that he gave me for an emergency and does not expect to be repaid. Hire a financial planner to advise on how to use the remaining funds. Story 146. Find a way to solidify it. I am not sure it will do me any good as legal tender in a liquid state. Story 147. Buy it in singles, fill a bathtub with it, and make love to my wife in a pool of money. Seriously, diversified investments. Story 148. I'll probably watch the next season of Slow Horses. I haven't seen it yet. Story 149. First, I would pay off my friend's mortgage. She has a small balance remaining, but she is struggling to keep food on the table. After that, I would ask a professional what to do. Story 150. Paying off debt is always the best option. $100,000 is not really that much. A new vehicle would take up half of it. Story 151. Pay off any debt, then invest the rest in index funds and hold them for 20 years. After that, do whatever you want. Story 152. Silver and gold or real estate are physical assets that represent real money and will remain through market changes and potential crashes. Story 153. Freeze it. I prefer cold hard cash. I would use it for day-to-day purchases and pay any bills that require a card or cash from my work income. That should make life a lot easier for a few years and not raise any red flags with the Internal Revenue Service. Story 154. Invest every penny, let it compound for a few years, and then retire. Story 155. Invest some of it, pay off my debt, and still have enough left over to pay my tuition and finally graduate. Story 156. Pay off all my debt, then invest the money I save each month by not having to make debt payments into an investment account. Story 157. Pay off my vehicle and rent an apartment. Life would remain relatively the same. Story 158. Buying an apartment would fix 90% of my insecurities and financial issues. Story 159. Research exchange-traded funds, then invest $98,000 in one and buy a new personal computer for $2,000. I do not want anything else right now. My main goal is to stop working before I am too old to enjoy retirement and to have enough money to enjoy life. At my current rate, I can retire around age 67 and then live below the poverty line unless I work longer. $98,000 would make a big difference. Story 160. New truck. The last one blew the engine. The rest will probably go into savings for the kids' college in a few years. Story 161. Paying off credit cards and property taxes early. Story 162. Pay off student loans and credit card debt. That's pretty much it. Put the rest in the bank. Story 163. 70% for my wife and our house. The rest will probably go into an index fund, as others have said. Story 164. $100,000 in liquid cash would cover 81% of a year's worth of my wife's medication. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.